Captain's Log, Episode 97. This episode of the Beer Vengers podcast is sponsored by the Beer and Cheese Collective, located at 35-11 Ditmars Boulevard in Astoria, Queens. Enjoy their eclectic array of craft beer, artisanal cheeses, and specialty grocery items at the Beer and Cheese Collective, home bar to yours truly, Captain Porter Brown Stout. Captain Huck and Beer Wonder welcome back actor, author, and happy hour guy Mark Aldrich for a sweeping four-pour show live from his disclosed location of Flagship Brewing on Staten Island. It's a wide-ranging episode from Mark's origin story, his budding literary career, the state of theater 4 years into pandemic land, and, of course, the sacred naming ritual. You know the drill, and if you don't, check out our back catalog for a refresher course. Remember to like, star, and subscribe whenever that feels appropriate. And send us your emails at thebeervengers@gmail.com if you have any questions, suggestions, or if you just like hearing us talk about you on the show. And now, without further ado, please enjoy episode 97, We Drink and We Forget Things.
We're the Beer Vengers, Beer Vengers, Beer Vengers. We're the Beer Vengers, we're the Beer Vengers, Beer Vengers, Beer Vengers. We're the Beer Vengers.
Welcome to the Beercast, everyone. Coming to you from an undisclosed location in Astoria, Queens, I am Captain Porter Brown Stout.
Coming to you from an undisclosed location in a 55 and older gated community. It is I, in California. It's me, the pale male hophead Huck.
And coming to you from the County of Kings, why, it is I, the Beer Wonder.
And we are
the Beer Vengers. I don't know if Huck and I know where we are. I'm a little worried about both of us. I'm going to be honest.
Well, you felt like you were trying to sort of push the tempo, and that probably needed a little of that from time to time. But
maybe
I think it all came out fine.
Maybe
start it over again.
I think we're going to be okay. I think we're going to make it through on this one.
I think this is
joking,
part of
of
the
course.
It's part of the magic we come here for. Welcome to the Beercast, all of you out there. In here, we're actually have a return guest who is also a first-time guest.
Yes.
And I'll explain what that means shortly. We have Broadway and TV and film and other theaters as well. Actor, author, beer podcaster in his own right, Mark Aldrich. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much.
Woo.
It is my pleasure to be here. I was very, very thrilled to be asked.
Now, Mark, something exciting has happened. You are, if I understand, on location doing important Beer Vengers research this evening. Are you not?
I am. As you can see behind me, nicely. Yeah. I am at the Flagship Brewery in Staten Island, actually, just a stone's throw from the ferry. And it's I try to conduct business here on Wednesday nights because it is one of the great, so far, undiscovered beer deals in the city. On Wednesday nights, they have a $20 you get an open bar from 7 to close, and all you can eat pizza from Pier 76, which is just down the street in one of the best pizzas in this part of the city. So it is a killer.
That's saying a lot for Staten Island.
It really is, yeah, because pizza is one of the things that Staten Island actually does do really well. Yeah, so this is
that is true. Yeah.
Yes, that was not intended to be a left-handed compliment.
Understood.
We'll save those for later.
It's a true open bar. So right now they've got a 10% barrel-aged stout on draft, and you can get that if you want. I prefer to be able to walk home, so I'm not going to do that. But it's there if you want it.
Well, that actually sounds like a wonderful segue to our pours. Let's get it going. And Beer Wonder, am I correct in thinking that Mark should go first, right?
Well,
we're
we talked
nearing in
about
on,
the- I mean-
we're nearing in on 100 episodes, and I'm finally getting through to you guys. I think. Wait, Hawk, do you have questions?
No. I'll go along with that.
All right. So Mark, what fresh pour do you have there?
Well, this is it was fresh just a minute ago. This is they actually have a new series here at Flagship that that they've been doing with the Porterhouse Brewing from Dublin, Ireland. So they've got their Wolfhound
Ooh.
series. This is a Nitro Irish Red. The brewers from Flagship actually traveled to Dublin, and they got a crash course in how to brew this. Porterhouse may sound familiar. They actually run Francis Tavern in Lower Manhattan.
Right.
So all
Oh,
their
yeah.
beers,
Yeah, I've had a lot of
Yeah.
their beers there.
so all of their beers have been poured there, but now with Flagship on board, Flagship is making their Nitro Stout and their Nitro Red here in Staten Island. So you're going to be seeing it more around the city. They're really, really good. I'm very impressed with what they came up with. And it's one of my go-tos. If I see this out and about in the wild, I will get the red or the stout if I see it, because they're excellent.
Excellent. Well, that's a wonderful way to start. All right, Beer Wonder, who should go next?
Well, Huck had objections, and really, I feel like I was not a very inclusive host here by really just sort of like going in on Huck there and not really letting me his objections up. So, as a penance, I do feel like Huck should go next.
Well, I thank you very much. I had a bunch of beers. I'm not quite at home, so I had a few beers I brought up, but then I did a little bit of I had to go run some errands in San Ramon, which is where the Fieldwork Brewing is located, and I got this beauty right here. It's called Wrapped in Warm Flannel. It is a wee
Ooh.
heavy, added a
Wee.
Scotch ale, weighing in at 11%.
That's just wee.
ABV. So I love a good Scotch ale. Let's give it a shot here.
Oh, and it's a bottle. You gotta get the bottle opener to crack that one open. This is doing correct. Oh dear. Oh my.
Oh,
That's
nice. Lighter
it's
in
got
color than I thought. It's a bit more brown than dark, but
Yeah, it's got like a dark honey
Hey.
character to it. That's
Yeah.
really nice.
yeah. Oh, I feel like I'm out in the peat bog right now.
Well,
Wrapped in warm
that's what
flannel.
happens when you have a wee heavy.
Yeah, nice February day for a peat bog.
That's true. Looking good, and I love the bottle.
Nice.
I love that like old school sense about that.
Yeah, I dig it. I'm hoping looking forward to trying this one.
All right. Now
Captain,
which one
it's
of us
a
is
standoff.
next?
It's a
All right.
standoff.
Uh-oh.
All right. You know what? I'll just rip off the Band-Aid and go next.
There you go. There you go.
All right. So this is a brewery, and I have a funny story that relates in a peripheral way to Mark, our guest today. This is from Ghost Hawk Brewing.
Oh,
It is from which I believe is in Passaic, New Jersey. It is a Belgian double, and the name of the beer is Dark and Cold, spelled like as if it were a German word, Darkenkold. You can't quite see it there, but
is there like a feather on the can? What is that?
Well, it's a hawk. It's a ghost hawk. So
Oh,
you
it's a
know
ghost
that's what
hawk.
it's
Oh,
a
there we
hawk
go.
feather. Yeah.
That makes sense.
All right,
Okay,
let's see what we got here.
I know. I gotta pick it up. Gotta catch up here. Sounded like a good crack though. Ooh,
Oh,
Toastier-
similar
Yeah.
color.
yeah.
It's
It's,
dark and cold.
Darker.
It's a little dark.
it is
yeah.
dark and cold.
Uh.
Yeah, good head on that one though. Looks like really
we
fine
are.
bubbles there. So that looks beautiful.
Yeah,
A little-
lovely
little-
can art.
Lighter than the captain usually pours, but certainly with a name like that, it's got to be dark and cold.
All right, Beer Wonder. It's time.
Well, here's the thing. You had the darkness, and I guess I am bringing the light because tonight I will be drinking a.
Sponsored pour.
Oh, a sponsored pour from the Beer and
Oh.
Cheese Collective at 35-11
I
Ditmars
know.
Boulevard.
I know we like them. We're big fans of them, and the provider does provide. And while the captain is in the darkness, I am using this beer to find the way in total daylight from Hop Butcher for the World. Check out that cool can art on
Oh,
there. I love the
wow.
sort of like wrapped
Oh, yeah, that's
hair
great.
kind of sense. Yeah, there's very cool stuff there. Other thing I love about it, if you take a look at the back of the can, there's a hop on it, and it gives you like the dimensions of flavor based on the hop there. I love this little design. This is something that they consistently do on all their cans, it looks like. So I'm excited to enjoy this double IPA with Citra, Nelson, and
Oh.
Galaxy hops. So, yeah. This is a very wonder beer, I'll say that. It's
Get
right
it.
up my alley. All right, here we go. Let's give the pour.
Looking like grapefruit
that's
juice right out.
Yeah.
Right off the bat.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically.
Very hazy.
Haze-tastic.
Getting even
That's
hazier.
beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really light.
I mean, gorgeous beer. Definitely smell the grapefruit. Gorgeous can. Everything. This is a looker and soon to be a drinker. So, gentlemen, should we do it?
Right. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers, Vengers.
Cheers, Vengers. Well, that's very nice.
Oh, Lassie.
Well, we're all coming up with our tasting notes. I do want to give a little bit more background to those of you who haven't listened to every single episode of the Beer Vengers. But if you haven't, you should do that now. And if you haven't listened to episode 49, that was episode called Curtain Up, where Mark, who's a member of the two-person organization, the Happy Hour guys, and Jimmy and the brewer Dave Lopez of Gun Hill, we're all on to talk about Curtain Up beer. So that's what I meant that Mark had been on the show before, but this is first in his own right. So that's why we didn't include him in the intros up top. But of course, next time that will all change. And had the idea to have Mark on. I'd been thinking about it for a while, but wanted to get in touch with you. So a couple months ago, well, actually, it wasn't a couple months ago, I went to the Gun Hill Barrel Age Festival, ran into Mark again, and I was thinking about how great it would be to have him on the show. And here we are with all of this because episode 49 was quite a while ago. And fortunately, you can go back, listen to it, you can hear it. And Mark, the reason I said that you're peripherally attached to this beer is because when we ran into each other at the Gun Hill Festival, of course, part of the deal with the VIP thing was you come home with a bottle of, I think it was Comes the Night beer.
Yeah.
But somehow I wound up with this beer as well. I brought it home with me. I don't know where I got it. I think it might be our friends Eric and Sweetie, our fans who were there, and they do this wonderful vlogging thing. And she was talking about how much she likes doubles. So if you're listening, Sweetie, I'm sorry I didn't remember you giving me this beer, but when it's hour 3 of the beer festival, all rules are off. And so this is me thanking you if you're the person I'm here to thank.
Yeah, that is very understandable. You're right. Hour 3, actually like 2.5 and beyond, it all bets are off.
Yeah, Huck, we were saying we've been to Ghost Talk, haven't we?
Yeah, my birthday crawl back in 19.
Oh, on that like incredibly hot day out there.
Yes, and we got those famous hot dogs across the street.
Oh yeah, that was fun.
The most famous hot dogs. Yeah,
But it looks like they've grown because I don't think they were canning back when we visited.
I don't think so either. I don't remember walking out with anything. And I remember we walked out of most places with things on that crawl.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is really nice. It's a classic Belgian. I think it's about a 7.5% here, if I read that correctly. And I just love that name, Dark and Cold. But really nice. How's the flagship? How's that barrel aged stout treating you, Mark?
It's actually not the barrel aged stout. I'm drinking the Irish Nitro Red. Yeah, it's clearly
you can tell where my brain is. Yeah,
clearly I'm not enjoying it. But no, it's great. It's very rich. It's creamy. Big malt, big caramel notes. It's really nice. And how often do you get to have a Nitro Red these days? So I'm a fan.
Big fan.
This Scotch ale is right on the money. I mean, I feel wrapped in warm flannel. It is caramely. It's a little bit smoky, super, I don't want to say super boozy, but boozy in a good way. Like it's warming my throat. It's really, really pretty good Fieldwork. And this bottle was only 10 bills. So,
oh, wow.
That's
solid.
That's a bargain.
Where did you acquire said bottle?
Fieldwork Brewing. I got it at the brewery.
Okay. Oh, at the brewery. Nice. Okay.
They are originally from San Ramon. They have brew pubs around the Bay Area, even as far south as uh, what's that town called? Monterey.
Oh yeah, I've heard of them.
There's a brew pub there. There's one in San Francisco. They're around, so they kind of have grown over the years. Oh, and look, it's bagpipes. I just noticed that's what that was a picture of. But yeah, really right on for a wee heavy. It's made with Scottish and English malts,
Mm-hmm.
and it's been it says mild, smoky, malty cacophony. Oh yeah,
Oh, nice.
right on. There you go.
A beer that describes itself as a cacophony is probably doing it right.
Yes.
How's that? How's the Hot Butcher beer there, Beer Wonder?
Well, it is tropical. And that is
Yeah.
one of the things on the can. It does feel like I've got a pineapple and a mango all blended together in some sort of like fruity beverage. I'm sitting there, island breeze, maybe a banana nearby. It's got the whole situation. And that's kind of what you'd expect with this combo of hops. So it's kind of doing exactly what it needs to do. It is delicious, but it is also a slow sipper. This one is 7.5%, so it's gonna do what it needs to do quickly. You don't want to rush it. You gotta enjoy those island breezes while you can, and definitely head your way into total daylight with this thing.
I came up with a photo of us at Ghost Talk here.
Oh my gosh!
we
Look
are.
at that.
Look
Yeah.
at these young kids.
Mhm.
Well, when you mentioned it was right after we had those famous hot dogs, I have a vague recollection of that particular one. That was at least our second or third brewery of the day,
Yeah, it was fun. I remember that. Yep.
with Cider
That was
Girl as
super
our
fun.
designated driver.
Yes, she did a great job.
Oh my gosh! In the before times, before.
It
Well, that's
was
the. Well, we were talking about that barrel aged festival, and Mark was at the very first one of those,
Oh,
which
wow.
I had forgotten was actually the 2020 version of Before Times, because January 2020
Oh,
was
right,
Before
sure.
Times.
The very
Yeah.
beginning, the very edge,
Yeah.
very edge of glory.
Mark, what was your experience at the Barrel Age Fest?
Oh my gosh. I mean, it was, for me personally, it was great. I was actually on a hiatus from being on tour with the show. So I was in town for a short period of time, and the stars aligned, and Jimmy and I were able to go. As you mentioned earlier, Dave Lopez is a friend of ours, so we were excited just to be there and to be in the space. And my wife very graciously agreed to be the designated driver, so we enjoyed ourselves with no limitations, shall we say? And it was just
Okay.
it was an interesting juxtaposition from the one this year to back then. And back then it was all, or predominantly, really really dark, really high ABV, lots of like heavy barrel aged things. This year I found it really interesting, and I think it's kind of sort of a sign of where the beer world is going. There are a lot of barrel aged sours. There were barrel aged lagers. The
Oh.
ABVs were much lower. There were still big barrel aged beers to go along with them, but the variety was much wider. And I just thought it was an interesting statement on like how much has changed in the last 4 years. Not just in the world, but in the beer world too. I loved them both for very different reasons.
Yeah, I found that for myself, that helped me narrow down the beers that I was going to have, because you can never have all the ones you want.
Exactly.
I
Right.
wish I'd tried some more of the sours and those other ones, but I think I almost exclusively had the dark ones, and no regrets at all. I think the best one I had might have been from Vosburg.
Oh.
I thought I had notes here, but
I also love the one from the Warbler, which was their breakfast stout.
Yes, I remember you pointing me towards that one.
Yeah, they're a really great brewery. Just they're north, just outside of Albany. They're relatively new. I stumbled upon them in, I believe it was 2020, when I was escaping to go hiking in the Adirondacks in the middle of a shutdown, and this poor little brewery had just opened, and I was like, well, I'm gonna check it out. And I walked in, I was kind of blown away by the quality of their beer, given that they were so new. And in talking with Dave, because we'd been working on the Curtain Up project and all these other things going on, I mentioned them, and lo and behold, here we are, 3.5 years later, and he remembered and sent them an email, and those guys came down, and I thought they knocked it out of the park. So that was exciting to see a
Yeah,
young
it was really
brewery
great.
get a shot. He was so thrilled to be in the city and pouring with those. He kept saying, "I'm pouring beers with people that I admired growing up," and I was like, "That's pretty awesome."
Well, Mark, of course, part of the reason that you're back on here is because we heard all about Curtain Up last time, and we heard about some other things, but we didn't really get to what we here on the
Oh
Beercast
boy.
refer to as the
Oh my gosh.
as your origin story.
Oh my gosh.
Because of course, before your Broadway career, before the Forming Happy Hour guys, you had your way. You first found your way towards beer, and we'd love to hear any observations you would like to talk about. What set you on the journey, how you arrived to the part on the journey where you are currently.
Well, I remember very distinctly the first beer. I always tried anything different that I saw. So even before the explosion of craft beer and that, I was always trying to try something from another country, or an out of town brewery, like anything I could
Right.
find that wasn't what I would find at my local grocery store. So I drank things like Beamish from Ireland, things along which we can't get here in the United States anymore. But I remember very distinctly the first time I tried, and this is going to date me a little bit, a lot of it. I tried the Winter Warmer from Harpoon, way back in the day,
Oh wow.
and it's just a spice bomb. It's all of the Christmas spices in a brown ale, and I was like, what is this? Is this beer? And I fell in love with it. And then I thought, well, I want to try more things that I don't think of as beer. So I'd say that's my origin story. Like Harpoon, and I'm from Massachusetts, although I moved when I was early. So anything New England, I have an affinity for. It's just a soft spot in my heart. And so when I tried that beer, I was like, there's a lot more to beer than I realized. And from there, it was I just took off. A few years later, we started the Happy Hour guys, and it actually started to more focus on historic bars and pubs around the country and around the world. And then what happened was we started to meet craft brewers in our travels, and we literally grew up with the craft beer movement. So we ended up, we're at over 400 episodes now. We're both professional actors, so we were traveling a lot for the first like 12, 15 years. And anytime we traveled, we explored where we ended up. And that would include breweries and historic bars and, bars of note, anything like that. So I just became this sort of intrepid beer traveler. And I all I wanted to do was try things I'd never tried before. That's my beer story.
So, Mark, you get a little more of a little timeline here. When you say the first 15 years, that begs the question: what year did it start?
Yeah.
We started.
We're trying to get your age.
We shot our pilot. I was 11, and we shot our pilot in
There you go.
in
Oh my
2006. I'm kidding. We shot our pilot in 2006, and we thought we're going to send it off to all of the cable networks, and someone's going to pick us up. Piece of cake, easy peasy. Well, 2 years later, we're still sitting around, and we're like, no one's picking us up. We're just going to do this ourselves. So we just started going places, shooting wherever we were, producing and editing and all of that ourselves. So that started in earnest in 2008. I'd say in about 2009, we like kicked into gear. And for a long time, we were releasing an episode a week, which included like traveling to places and full production.
Right.
And then Jimmy, now my partner Jimmy Ludwig, and his family in 2022, they, in no small part because of the pandemic, he accepted a position as a professor of theater, of musical theater in northern Michigan. So we are now separated by more than half the country, and I'm sort of soldiering on with the Happy Hour guys banner at the moment. He does what he can when he can, but he's very busy. So we're sort of redefining ourselves at the moment, but nothing has stopped, and I still use it as an excuse to travel as much as possible. I just went to another brewery 3 days ago. I went to my 552nd different brewery. I went to Wild Air
Whoa.
in Asbury Park, New Jersey, who has only been around for about a year, and they're fantastic. Their tap room is beautiful. If anybody's in the neighborhood, you should definitely stop by. There's a lot to do in Asbury Park, but that's definitely should be on your list if you go.
Well, that's what I definitely noticed on your Instagram. The fact that you always put the number of how many breweries you've been to. It makes me envious because I never did that, and I wouldn't know where to start, and I would have an inaccurate number. How early in that did you realize I have to keep the tally of
Well,
this?
I was inspired by Chris O'Leary, Brew York, who's
New York.
Mhm.
you know
Okay.
New
newsletter
York,
travels far and wide, and I'm still not quite
Legendary.
sure how he manages to do it, but he travels the world. So he's at over 3,300 breweries.
Right.
That's never going to happen for me. But I was inspired by him, and it was a number of years ago that I decided I wanted to figure out for myself to begin with. So I went back and I went through every brewery that was open in the country at the time. Now this must have been 7-8 years ago now. And then I went back and looked at our feed,
Okay.
at the Happy Hour guys feed, and saw what was missing, and then folded in breweries that had sadly closed. And then I picked up from there and continued on. So yeah. So and then I was on tour with shows for over 3 years. So I was traveling to a new city every 1 to 3 weeks, and I would use that as an opportunity to explore the craft beer scene, 5 nights a week after my show. Now I will say I learned that not the rest of the country is not quite as late night inclined as New York City. So
Right.
if I was doing a show
That's very
Fair
true.
enough. Fair enough.
yeah, if I was doing a show on a Thursday night and I got out at 11, my choices were slim in certain cities, but I found them. So yeah.
That's fantastic. So you joined the cast of a touring show just so you could get to different breweries.
It's one.
That's why I became an actor.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Yes,
that's
that makes
that's
sense.
part of the joy of it, right? Is you get to see
Yeah.
but also if someone else is picking up your bar tab and the travel tab to the bar tab, that's the win.
It's awesome.
Exactly.
Now
right.
you said you're from Massachusetts. What town are you from?
I was born in Worcester. We
Worcester.
moved when I was
Me too.
Worcester. Really? Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
We moved when I was very young to Virginia, and I spent the bulk of my
Oh,
childhood
okay.
growing up in Virginia. But I still have family in Massachusetts. We travel there often. I travel there often, and the roots run deep. My dad's first job as a kid was at Fenway Park, so I'm a Red
Oh,
Sox
wow.
fan. There's
Cool.
no escaping it. It's just the way it was, So yeah, so I still feel I've done a lot of work in New England. I've done shows in Massachusetts and Vermont and Maine, and I feel at home anytime I go there. So I still consider myself a New Englander. at heart.
Yeah. I was born in Worcester as well, but I grew up in Grafton and Shrewsbury, which are suburbs of Worcester.
Sure. Yeah,
Um,
my family was living in
But yeah,
Northborough. at
moved
the
to New
time.
York when I was 22. So that's fantastic. And the breweries are amazing. I mean,
I know. Yeah.
there you go. I used to work at Tom Foolery's. Remember Tom Foolery's?
Oh yeah.
You're
Wow.
not that old. But great breweries. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Treehouse. And what's great is my family lives down Cape Cod now, and they
wow.
have the Treehouse sandwich, and it's
Right,
a great tap
right.
room, and it's not like the regular Treehouse where everybody just waits in long lines.
Right.
It's like
right.
you can access it. Really nice. Parking's not
Yeah.
good, but otherwise it's a fantastic spot. I was just there
And-
recently. Yeah.
And for those who don't know, Sandwich is a town, not a menu item.
That
Yes,
seems
I
suspicious.
know he's mentioned before, but Mark, I appreciate you reminding me of that because I was thinking like a treehouse sandwich. I wonder what's in that. Oh yeah, of course he meant there's a treehouse.
There's a lot of different
which is
there's things in Sandwich around the town where you see a place and be like Sandwich Public House. Oh, I wonder if they good sandwiches there. Everything looks like a sandwich place.
right.
Sandwich City Hall. All right, I'm there.
Huck's sister actually lives there, and we've talked about this at
Yes.
great length. But of course, again, we drink, we forget things.
True.
It's how it always happens.
Right.
Only the finest do.
Right on.
It's like a slight. a slight
I'm curious
twist
to
on
go.
the-
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that's a slight twist on the Tyrion Lannister saying. Like, we drink and we forget things. He drinks and he knows things. So
yeah,
Perfect.
yeah,
Right, that's true. That's true.
I think that might be the episode title. We drink and we forget things.
pretty good.
Sounds about right.
The I want to make a correction, a huck up early before we have to go to the next. I said field work is made of San Ramon. No, San Ramon is another outpost. They brew in Berkeley, California.
Oh,
Really interesting. This beer I'm having is part of a series called the Wayback Series, and they made 4 beers: Death Will Tremble Imperial Stout. We had that the other night with Uncle Ed. We also had Crowded Lonely Night, which is a quad ale, and they also made a barley wine, and this Wrapped in Warm Flannel. And the idea is that they're making strong beers without all the adjuncts. They're making them in the pure way, the Wayback Series, as it were. So really nice. Yeah, I appreciate that.
I feel like this is. I want to go back to the beginning of your origin story, Mark, because I'm curious. You said that you're always looking for something different. Did you have no fallow period where you were just drinking garbage? Like, because a lot of people's origin story start with terrible beer.
yeah.
Did you not have a period of that for yourself at all?
well, sure. I mean, I was in college once. And when I was in college and where I was in college, I went to school in Williamsburg, Virginia, which was dominated by
Okay.
Anheuser-Busch down the road. So, I mean, one of our fancy days
Sure.
out would be to go to the brewery there and get 2 of the little samples of whatever Anheuser-Busch thing you could get that day. There was also a really, really horrible mass-produced, I don't even think it was local, but it was called Goebbels. I mean, it would have been the equivalent of like old-time Pabst or old-time, not even as good as Pabst or Ham. And we just called it,
Or hams?
yeah,
Yeah.
we called it gerbils. And you could get like a case for $5. It was barely beer, but we were in college and we didn't know any better. So I actually blame that for me coming late to beer in my life, because I was like, beer's horrible. Why are all these people drinking beer? And then it took something, it actually took me drinking a Guinness and then a Beamish and going down the foreign menu to discover that not all beer was like a bland, light, flavorless lager, because that's all we were getting in the country until it started to bubble up into something else.
This is a familiar path. I think
Yeah.
Beer Wonder had kind of a similar thing where
Yeah.
either you soldiered through terrible beer and eventually your taste got better, or you thought you hated beer and
Yeah.
then forsook it for some time and then
Exactly.
eventually got back there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Goebel.
That is the path. That is the way for many people.
That is
so.
that
That looks very
Goebel.
familiar. Yeah.
That is Goebel, and
Mhm.
that makes it look so much fancier than it was. Golden light. I mean, who wouldn't
Naturally
like
light.
Golden
Yeah, I love
Light?
that.
Yeah, it was bad.
Interesting. I feel like there really is, I guess this is another good thing about the craft beer movement, is because since now all of us having craft beer think of the macros as sort of the devil, it's interesting that I don't think there are a lot of just on their own shitty beers anymore.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
mean,
you're
because
right.
those of us who are craft think all the macros are shitty, but like all those shitty brands that I grew up with, whether it's Milwaukee's Best, we just mentioned Hams, Goebel,
Mhm.
what was the Meisterbrow was
Oh,
another
yeah.
one.
Meisterbrow.
yep.
And Old Milwaukee itself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if any of those beers are still left.
And if they are, they have been bought by the bigger companies generally.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
As a rule.
Somewhere there's like a grandfather fridge in someone's basement, that has all of them.
With some vintage Meisterbrow. Yeah.
The pull tabs. Yeah.
Yeah. But talking about you're mentioning about how that, and but I think I also agree. It's interesting you talking about how going out and drinking after shows. I think
Yeah.
that's definitely where a lot of my formative drinking experience started, because you do a show and it's like 11 o'clock at night, and presuming you're not in a place where all the bars are already closed, you go out with the cast and you have drinks and you
Yeah.
and you have that. And we mentioned a little bit already about your career in the and I remember the last time you were on talking about not only with your touring that you were in the midst of a tour in Ohio when
Yeah,
the pandemic started. Was that right?
that is correct. Yeah, we were. I was doing the My Fair Lady Lincoln Center production, which I had done on Broadway,
Oh wow.
and then we closed on Broadway, and I thought my time with the show was up, and then my wife got cast in the tour, and so then they asked if I wanted to come
Hmm.
along, and of course we jumped at the chance. We never get to work together, so we were very
Yeah.
excited, and we started in November of 2019. We opened
Oh
in
man.
Wow.
Washington. We opened in Washington D.C. Like right around New Year's Eve, 2019, 2020,
Sure.
and then hit the. We had a short layoff in there, but we hit the road around that time. And in hindsight, um, we're pretty sure that I had COVID. A mysterious flu-like illness swept through our cast in January, February. Um, we're
Mm.
in hindsight pretty certain it was COVID. In fact, one of the most horrifying memories I had was because at that point we were still in the show must go on mind set, where like you pushed through
Yeah.
Sure.
everything.
Yeah.
If you can walk, if you're not getting sick, you can do the show. You should go and do your job. Um, I remember we were in Charlotte. I don't know if I should tell this story online, but I will. So I had arranged for my wife and I to go and have
It's okay. No one's listening.
a sloth experience at one of the wildlife parks where I paid extra for us to like be alone with a sloth and hold it and feed it, and I felt horrible on the day, and I thought, you know what, I've already paid for it, we don't have another chance to do it, I'll be fine, I'm just gonna push through, we're gonna do it. So we had this great day with Nacho the sloth, and and then the world changed. And I remember once we were coming out of lockdown, I was like, oh my god, what if I killed Nacho? Like, what if I gave COVID to Nacho the sloth? So I went online and
Oh
I looked
my.
it up, and thank God Nacho is alive and well and still doing his job. It's fine.
Oh phew.
Oh, that's a relief.
But then subsequently, my wife got very ill, and hers,
Mm.
and again, we're fairly as certain as we can be that it was COVID. Hers turned into pneumonia,
Right.
and when
Oh wow.
everything shut down, we were in Columbus, Ohio. We were driving the tour, and she was still very sick. So they kept telling us we'd be back in a week or two, and everything would be fine. So she wasn't up to take the drive from Ohio back to New York, which is actually a blessing in disguise because New York was being hit so hard. And we ended up staying in
Right.
the Columbus, Ohio downtown Holiday Inn for 6.5 weeks. And it
Wow.
for most of the time it was a huge 240 room hotel, and at most there were usually 3 or 4 other people in there at any given night. So we would go days, maybe a week, without actually seeing other guests. It was very Stephen King. It was very surreal.
Wow.
Um, and the only reason it stayed open is because it was a block from a hospital, and the traveling doctors needed to
Mm.
have a hotel. Otherwise, our hotel would have been closed down
Right.
too. So yeah, so the
Wow.
interestingly, so during those 6.5 weeks, obviously everything was closed. But given what I said earlier about wanting to explore and supporting small businesses and things like that, I took it upon myself to go to as many of the local breweries as were open and doing, takeout. You'd pull up at the curb and they'd come out and hand you a bag and you'd be like, thank you. And you'd travel on. So I went to every brewery in Columbus that I could that was open, um, and got beer to go. And if they had merchandise, I'd be like, you know what? I'm going to buy a hat. I'm going to buy a shirt. I'm going to do whatever I can to help you because you guys are getting hammered right now. So for 6.5
Yeah.
weeks, I did that, and I have a really soft spot in my heart for Columbus, Ohio now. It was very
Yeah.
difficult, but at the same time, like my wife and I got to spend a lot of time together, and there was no pressure other than I remember walking in circles in the parking lot with no other cars in the parking lot, just calling family and friends to check in, see how they were, and we just walk for hours in the parking lot, checking on the people we knew and cared about, getting our steps in. and then supporting local businesses. So yeah, so that was the beginning of the pandemic for us.
Wow.
Wow, that's amazing.
I grew up in Dayton, but I've only been to a few places in Columbus. The main thing the last few years, because my father and I used to do a lot of traveling, and we found BrewDog pubs like all over the world, and then they opened a big facility near Columbus.
We stayed there.
So you spent some time there?
We stayed there.
Oh, at the doghouse?
We stayed at the doghouse the night before we opened in Columbus. So 3 days before the world shut down,
Okay.
we stayed at the BrewDog. And my poor wife was really
Oh,
ill.
that's too
fantastic.
funny.
So like she would stay in the room and I'd go down and get stuff and bring it up. And we had a great time. It's a beautiful facility. It's a really like crazy place, but but things were already starting to shut down, and there was a wariness about people at the time.
Yeah.
So it felt odd, but it's a beautiful place. It really is. You never have to. And the room we stayed in.
Yeah.
You open the door and it looked out over the barrel aging room, and there's a tap in your room, and there were beers in the shower. There's like a little cooler in the shower. You can open the door and get a beer in the shower.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Yeah.
Shower
then the
beers
world
are very
started.
popular.
Well, yeah.
It did, and then like when you were here 2 years ago, talking about Curtain Up, and of course the whole reason. Quick primer for anyone who didn't listen to that episode, doesn't even remember that Curtain Up was a beer that was there to buoy up the theatrical community.
Mhm.
It was an open source beer everywhere, and when you were on and we were talking about that, and we all had a different Curtain Up beer that time. Broadway, I think, was just starting to come back in a somewhat anemic way, but there was a whole like Broadway is back campaign.
Mhm.
And we expressed some of our reservations about that. Things are better since then, but they're still a little weird. I guess I'm curious with I'm back at my one person show that I do. I've also done a couple of small things, but you've gotten back at some of the circles, some more touring and stuff like that. So how are you experiencing the current phase of post or continuing COVID world as far as the theatrical community goes?
It's funny because the Broadway is back thing was a huge, especially when it comes to Broadway. The thing to remember is it's big business, and it's really run by the producers. That's there's a trickle down effect, and it helps all of those restaurants and bars and retail shops, and it is a part of the lifeblood of New York. But at its heart, it is a money making endeavor. So the producers,
Yep.
it was very important to them for people to believe that Broadway was back. What's going on now that a lot of people still don't realize is, I mean, just last week there were Broadway shows that were canceled because of COVID. You don't hear that
Sure.
anymore. You sort of have to do the deep dive into the Broadway media to find out what's going on, and they often couch it in other language. They say, because of an illness or whatever. But it is still COVID, and it's still affecting the business and I remember when I did the Broadway revival of Ragtime about 15 years ago, and we had 2.5 feet of snow. They didn't cancel the show. We didn't cancel the show. Like we had to find our way to the theater and perform. And that's how it was in the before times. We can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
But a lot of people in charge also don't want to admit that we can't do that. So I think theater is back, but theater has changed. There's a lot more competition right now. There are a lot of people still trying to find their way in the new reality of the business. I'm doing a lot more concert work right now, which before I did almost exclusively full shows. I think it's easier for people to produce concerts than full productions at the moment. Again, like it's changing, but it's incremental. And as long as people are still getting sick, and it's not just COVID, it's RSV, it's a lot of the other specifically respiratory viruses really affect performers because we got to be able to sing and speak. So we're still feeling our way through it. I think it's getting better, I think for me personally, it looks like my year is going to be pretty good, at least in comparison to the last 3 years. Um, um, but I guess the shorter answer to your question is I think it's still very much a work in progress, and we're still figuring out what the new normal is.
Yeah.
And we're not even at the new normal, but we're going to have to figure it out
Yeah.
as we go on a regular basis.
Yeah, I feel that way also about New York in general.
Yes.
Is like I think it's still, I don't know how it's totally coming back from everything or what it's going to look like when we're
Yeah.
at some, and maybe it'll still feel like it's changing because New York is always changing, sometimes slower than others.
Right.
But it's odd. I think the reason I one of the first I found it really interesting. One of the first jobs I think you had back when things were opening up was you did a production of Men of La Mancha in Lancaster,
That's right.
Pennsylvania. Do
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
that right?
That is absolutely right. Yeah.
And I remember seeing the things you were putting on Instagram and just talking about all the various cast changes that were happening in that very brief amount of time for probably a relatively brief run. But also, to me, we're talking about going to bars after shows with the cast and, having that sense of camaraderie.
Mm.
And I was struck by all the things you were talking about, how that you all had to isolate when you weren't at the thing. So you were showing all these pictures of like covered bridges and
Yeah.
and wildlife because you couldn't hang out with your castmates.
Right. That is very true.
Wild.
Yeah. And I did a production of Titanic in Milwaukee, and I got COVID. I was the first person in that production to actually get COVID, and I hadn't been anywhere. The only thing I'd done other than rehearsal was take a hike in the middle of the woods, and I might have passed one person on the trail, and that was about it. So that's still a mystery. There was one other guy in the cast that got it, and we're like, I don't know which one of us got it first or how we got it. It's that mysterious. It could have been in rehearsal, who knows? But yeah, and
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have let that level of guard down at this point. But certainly for a while, yeah, it was very much, we're at work. I'll just see you at work tomorrow. We can't socialize. The theater was asking us to please, use our best judgment in terms of where and when we would see each other, because obviously, if you're hanging out with 6 other people from the cast, if one of you gets it, chances are 4 or 5 of you are going to get it at least, and then the
Right.
show is in jeopardy. So yeah.
Now, Mark, it's my understanding that you were in the original cast of Newsies. Is that correct?
I was, yes, I was. I am.
That's
I'm
fantastic.
actually-
Let me ask you what.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No,
go ahead.
No.
I was going to ask you, what was Christian Bale like as a child actor?
It's really funny.
Like I think that was the movie.
This is all hearsay,
Excuse me?
but from what I've been told, he
Uh-oh.
didn't. They made it a musical after he was cast, and he was very upset about that. So to this day, he does not acknowledge that he did the movie. He doesn't involve himself with any
Wow.
of the like reunions or any of the things around it. He didn't have anything. A lot of the movie cast did come either to see the show or to meet us or hang out, and but he, as far as I know, to this day, still continues to deny any involvement.
Oh,
So
that
it's kind
was
of like
that,
Christopher Plummer in The Sound of Music.
that
Yes.
ended up being a good question.
Yeah, but I was the only cast member who did the out of town tryout at the Paper Mill Playhouse in Millburn, New Jersey, then went to Broadway, did the entire Broadway run, which was about 2.5 years, and then went straight from Broadway onto tour, which is the big tour where I did all of my craft beer exploring for another 2.5 years. So I was with the show. It was supposed to be a 9-week contract, and I was with it for about 5 years. And yeah, it
Wow.
was kind of
Wow.
it was the job of a lifetime. Like, it really was. It came out of nowhere, and it
Yeah, it
changed
was
my
a big
life.
part of your life there. Yeah.
Yeah, it really was. And people can still see it. They did film us. They filmed us at the Pantages Theater in Los Angeles. We're the live version, so technically I am in the movie of Newsies, just in the other movie of Newsies. And so you can see it on Disney.
Aha.
You can see it on Disney Plus now. Yeah, but there's no Christian Bale. There's just a
very
there's
cool.
a Jeremy Jordan.
And you're on the original. You're on the cast recording as well.
I am. Yeah.
Right on.
But of course, in the midst of all of this that we've been doing and theater lurching back and having false starts and finding its way, you did explore a few other outlets in the last. I don't know how long you've been working on your writing career, I'll admit I haven't read the book yet, but I am really curious to hear about how that all came about. If it was all the time inside that made you like, maybe there's something you've been working on for years. Do you finally committed to finishing, or how? Tell me about that.
Um, it was a really interesting sort of confluence of many things. Um, the fans of Newsies called all of us, shall I say, slightly mature character men. They called us the Oldsies. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah. So we were the Oldsies. We had there were T-shirts.
Of course they did.
It was a thing.
Yeah.
But one of my fellow Oldsies, Nick Sullivan, began writing books back in 2016, and we were all like, "Sure, you're going to write a book, whatever." But he did, and he's written 6 or 7 books now. Well, I've always written. I started writing before I started performing, but then performing sort of overtook it, and it got shoved aside. But then when the pandemic hit, we were all looking for creative outlets, and so I just sat down one day and started to flesh out a story that had been in the back of my brain for decades, and one thing led to another, and I just kept doing it, and then before I knew it, I had a 292-page book that combined a lot of things that I really love. It combined theater, it combined music with travel and craft beer. There are a lot of craft breweries, like real life craft breweries and real life beers mentioned in my books. I mentioned the places and the people that I really love. So Gun Hill is mentioned in my book. Beer culture in Midtown is mentioned. Montauk Brewing, whose hat I'm wearing tonight, they feature pretty prominently in book
Nice.
1. And in book 2 travels a little further south and goes to the Outer Banks of North Carolina. But again, Gun Hill, there's a great brewery in the Outer Banks called Swelsa Brewing that they all feature very prominently, and they're like great bars and things like that. So I didn't start writing with the intention of actually having the books published. But because of the sort of beauty of independent publishing now, and I wasn't really interested in going through the full traditional publishing route. Just wasn't where I was. So I just published it myself. So now I've got.
Okay.
I even brought them because I always have them with me. I even have I have 2 books out now, which is not something I ever thought I would say.
Oh wow.
And the third one will be out this spring. And they all combine all of the same things that I just mentioned. Plus they are urban fantasies, so they also combine folklore and urban legends and paranormal stories from around the world, different cultures, and they all sort of come together in this big mixing bowl. And probably goes without saying that the Oldsies, who we're all still really, really good friends. We have a text chain that has been going for 13 years now. And I always say, like,
Wow.
whenever it finishes, we should donate it to the Smithsonian, because there must be unbelievable things in there. But the Oldsies became, in my stories, they became the Grumbles. So there's this group of older character actors who they always play sort of cranky characters. So they got called the Grumbles by the fans, and it sort of follows them as they deal with a lot of this otherworldly stuff that invades their world.
Oh, that's great.
So cool.
And I know you held up the books briefly. Let everyone know what the titles of the
Yes.
books are so far.
Book 1 is called The Peripherals. Book 1. The End is the Beginning. It's called The End is the Beginning because it starts in Manhattan and then ends in Montauk, and Montauk is the end of Long Island. So that's book 1.
Yeah.
And book 2 is called Red Sky, The Peripherals, book 2. And that starts in Manhattan and then travels down to the Outer Banks of North Carolina, and they encounter all sorts of figures from history and from legend and from cultures around the world. And they're a lot of fun, and I have a great time researching them and bringing all the different aspects from around the world together, and trying to show how much we all really have in common, and also what the power of art and music and theater really brings to the world that maybe we don't hear about all that much.
I presume, and I know this is the big behemoth. I feel like since we're a craft brew show and we're all about the micro stuff, but I have to mention, I assume you can get it at the corporate behemoth bookseller, Amazon. Is that the
You can-
easiest way to get it?
That is the easiest way to get it. You can get it there. You can get it through Kindle, which is of course Amazon. It's also on Kindle Unlimited, so if you have that, you can read it for free.
Yeah.
You can order it through BarnesandNoble.com, but as of now, it's not
Okay.
really being stocked in individual stores. But that's my next project. That and I really want to support independent bookstores, so I'm sort of approaching them one by one and spreading the word, sort of
Nice.
more ground level work than that. But yeah.
Well, yeah, in Astoria, I think we have one independent bookstore, don't we?
Yes, I think. Well, yeah, and frankly,
Do you know the one I mean? Yeah.
we're lucky to have that one. I think so, because they're few and far between these days.
Yes, I think
Yeah.
so too. Yeah.
But you will, fans of Broadway
Well,
and fans of craft beer will recognize a lot of familiar things in the books. Some of them disguised not very well, and some of them not disguised at all.
Looking forward to reading it.
Yeah.
All right, so we've gotten through the origin story. We've been talking about the whole theater. We've been talking about the books. Gentlemen, are we ready to start spitballing about
gosh.
Mark's Beer Venture name?
This is a big moment, Mark. So really, the question is, are you ready?
Honestly, I forgot we were doing that. I have to think about it.
Is anyone ever really ready for this? But I mean,
I don't think so. But Mark, I mean, and we know what your OG beers are, but like, is there a style that calls to you regularly?
I am an what's the omnivore equivalent of beer? I'm an omnibeverage drinker. There's really no style of beer
there we are.
there's no style of beer that I dislike. I will say I more often than not will gravitate towards IPAs, doubles or below. Triples I'll try.
Okay.
But I'm a big sucker for anything stout or porter. I love things aged in barrels. It doesn't have to be a stout or a porter. I just love things that are aged in barrels. I feel like I'm sort of a novice explorer in the sour world, but I really enjoy it. It just took me a while to get there. So I haven't found the beer yet that I dislike unless it's a really bad beer.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
definitely going to explore, and
Yeah.
he's a Renaissance man. And
Well, and I do have a question, because there is, I know that you've done shows on Broadway. Do you tap? Because tap has many meanings between the
Oh.
theater and the brewing world.
Oh, yeah, that is true.
That is true. I am an enthusiastic and very poor tapper.
Okay. All right.
As opposed to a very good tap pourer. Oh, come on. Poor tapper. is
There
tap
you go.
pourer.
There you go.
I
See?
like it. Yeah.
I just don't think that's the name.
I heard it.
Yeah.
I did think, because you're mentioning the hopnivore or the omnivore, maybe a hopnivore.
Hopnivore.
would
We
be
did
a-
get some
would be a
hoppy beers
possible-
in there. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that does feel like feels like a voracious character that goes out and
True.
grabs all the beer and is
Right.
is trying everything, is really doing the good work of the Beer Vengers there.
And as the character actor, maybe he's got a little bit of malt character to him,
Oh, okay.
True.
hop character. He's a character because he plays characters on the shows and the plays.
I see what you're doing there, Huck. I like it.
Thank you.
I'm trying to think of maybe incorporating. We got Newsies, Oldsies, Sudsies.
Sudsies. Sudsy.
But Sudsy doesn't really, I think, bring us enough.
Especially because
there.
you're a dark beer drinker, right? We're
He's also
we
the
got
happy hour guy. I mean, so there.
I mean,
you know,
yeah, that is almost a Beer Venger name in itself. But I feel like we got to spice it up a little bit for this.
Right, because if you have two happy hour guys, they should each have their own individual
Exactly,
identity.
exactly.
They're stronger together, but formidable on their own.
Yeah. The Hopnivore does have an interesting sensibility to it. That one I think is starting to pull into the lead. But the thing about this, Mark, is that you choose the name. The name does not necessarily choose you.
yeah.
So-
Also that he's the explorer, the beer explorer. He's always trying the new
Yep.
new styles and new breweries. He's a trailblazer, even if you will.
There's something about venturing the
beer venturer.
The beer venturer. Honestly, that's it's very close to our general brand, but beer venturer does have a nice character to it.
Yeah.
Notice Mark isn't saying anything.
Well, I feel like I like
You're the
beer
writer.
venture, but I feel like it's encroaching too much on your territory. You know what I mean? There's beer vengers, beer
Not at all.
venturer. What's another word for explorer?
Oh, see, this is why I should always bring a thesaurus when we're having a beer venture name off.
Taking notes.
There's like there's something like I don't know. There's like I like this sort of like character sensibility. If you're thinking about an explorer, you could be like a rambler or something like that. You know, that gets us into crowlers and growlers and
I just was looking for
discovery. The discoverer.
I just looked up synonyms, and the third one was rambler. So,
rambler.
Okay. Yeah, I'd love to have some version of beer weaved into the name as well.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
It doesn't have to be Hopnivore, but Hopnivore is like the only one we have so far that actually has beer as part of the name, except for Beer Venturer.
Well, if we're trying all kinds of different beers, we're rambling, we're roving, we're.
He's also the player. He's
the player,
troubadour, the
true beer door,
true beer door. It doesn't quite roll off the tongue, but I actually really like it.
True beer door. It's a little hard to get to, but true beer door is kind of nice.
It is.
It includes the music.
Or just the beer door.
You just say when you're in Massachusetts.
Or how about
you just say troubadour? Troubadour.
Hang on, the Brewbador.
Oh, the Brewbador. There we go.
Do we have a name?
I think we found it. I think we found it. I think we've got it.
All right.
We're gonna have to land there because otherwise it'll be another 20 minutes.
Well, but we need a jester type. We need someone to bring levity to our band, and a Brewbador would certainly be that person.
Brewbador's not bad when you say
Brewbador's pretty great.
I kind of dig it.
All right.
So okay.
I'm going on Instagram right after this. I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna become the Brewbador. If it's
there you go. Yeah, make sure that no one else has that.
You gotta get that branding. That's important. That's what matters, right?
Absolutely.
No, I like it.
Right.
Thanks so much for joining us, Mark. This has been a blast.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I've had a great time. Thank you so much.
All right, so we've got the story, we've got the name. Is there anything else we need to cover before we bid the Brewbador fond brew well?
Well, here's the thing, Brewbador. If people want to find you or any of your alter egos on the social medias, where should they look?
Okay, on Instagram and Twitter. Yes, I still call it Twitter. I am Mark the Ginger. On Facebook, they can find me at Mark Aldrich -author, or just Mark Aldrich. I'm easy to find. And I respond to everything. I'm on the socials pretty often. And if they're interested in the Happy Hour Guys, they can find us also on all of those things as either Happy Hour Guys or the Happy Hour Guys.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for joining us. It was great getting to know a little bit more about you personally, since the room was so crowded the last time you were here. There was not room for much besides curtain up on that one. So glad to have you back. And come back anytime.
Yeah,
it's my pleasure. Anytime you guys have room for me, I'll be here.
All right. Thanks for listening, everyone. You know where to look for us on the socials at The Beer Vengers, thebeervengers@gmail.com, all of that. And with that, Huck, play us out.
Oh, we're the beer vengers, beer vengers, beer vengers.
We're the beer vengers.